Hi everybody, Carol here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a card that uses several colors of cardstock. So I thought I will just go ahead and start cutting now. I make an A6 size card, which is 6 1/4 by 4 1/2. And so I'm cutting a hunter green color, forest green, and a navy, and a lighter blue, and even a little white for an inset. And so all of these are I start off first of all size 9 inches out of the 8 1/2 by 11, and then I trim down to 6 1/4, and then I go down to 4 1/2, and I'm cutting that all in half so that I can make more than one card. Now here is a little piece that I'll use later. It's about 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch smaller all the way around because it will be an inset on the solid color. And this color is called amethyst. It's a very pale lilac or lavender, and I just want it for backing of some little squares you'll see later that we're going to stamp and cut out. And this is just to serve as a backing where it barely peeks out. So since I have it here, I'm going to go ahead and cut 4 really quickly and have them ready if I need them, or even for a future project. Since I'm here and I'm doing it, I might as well save it for later. I will also cut my card base the same size as start off with 9, then to 4 1/2, 6 1/2, 6 1/4. I'll get it right in a minute, and then I will fold it on a scoreboard. I will mark it and score it at the 4 1/2 and fold it there. So the card set I'm using today, the stamp set I'm using is from Stampin' Up, and I'm not a dealer, I never have been, but I have a lot of their products I've had for years and years. So this is called Happiest of Holidays, and that says wishing you happiest of holidays. I may stamp that on the inside of the card. But this is a rather simple card set, but I just think that sometimes we overlook those little card sets, stamp sets, and don't really maximize their potential because they can make some really pretty cards. And so I'm stamping some of them in red, a bright Christmas red. I'm going to test this out. I ended up needing to re-ink this one. The next one is navy. I ended up having to re-ink it. And then the last one was the forest green, and it did just fine. But I just stamped a few of these to have them on hand. And I'm trying to put enough pressure on it, and quite a lot of pressure on it actually, to get a good impression. And as you'll see, I didn't get a good impression at all. So I thought I could have just edited that right on out, but I'd let you see that it just happens. So keep going. The next one was really good. And you never know for sure. All you can do is your best. And so here I'm using the navy, and it needed re-inking also, but it worked out okay. I got a pretty good impression, so I let it go this time. And do a couple of those. We'll cut them out later, and I'll show you how I'm going to use them. These 3 have a wheel. See, that was a bad impression there. So I'm probably just not inking it up right, or I'm not putting enough pressure, and I am then right on that middle section. And so then the last one, I'm just going to do one of it. And there is a wheel that goes with this set that matches it. It's called Swirling Stars, but it has those loop-de-loop lines in the background, like the stamp set. Now here it is. It's a jumbo wheel called Swirling Stars, as I said. And this is a jumbo handle. I have fun using these myself. They make everything go so fast. Now this time I am putting a cartridge in because I'm going to fill up a whole page. And what happens, I look as if I am really struggling getting that cartridge down. But what happened, I'd taken the lid off the ink cartridge and re-inked that, so it was full of ink, and I was trying to not get my fingers on it. So finally, I just had to put the cap back on the cartridge. then I had something to push on. And you push it in until it clicks. You can hear it click in person. And then when it did finally get in there, I just slid the cap back off. And then snapped my wheel in. And I had used it already. That's why I knew it needed re-inking. So that's the reason I'm using a tissue there to keep my hands clean. Now, what I didn't realize is that I had not actually snapped that all the way in. Now I'm releasing the cartridge, by the way, and letting it go up to touch the wheel so it'll get inked up. Now that's what happened. I tried to make it go and it wouldn't go, and it was because I hadn't pushed it all the way in. Now look how beautiful and dark that is. Just run it a couple of times to get the ink covered on all the wheel. These are my ink cartridges for my jumbo. I don't have that many, but I keep them in a bag, and I put a list of the names of what inks I do have. And but that re-inking made such a difference. Now this is an old sewing ruler that I have, and I just took some of my leftover rubber from the stamp sets and doubled them up so that would raise that ruler up enough to give the wheel a guide, a good something to lean up against and push up against, and not just run over it. And there actually is a guide out there for sale, and I probably should just go ahead and buy one, but this just works so fine that I just haven't felt the need to rush right out and do that. But anyway, I'm rolling a piece of tape over and putting it on that end of the white paper just to hold it in place while I make that first row, because the ruler is off the paper, so that rubber is not gripping the paper and holding it in place. Now it is. Now it will hold the paper down so it's not going anywhere. But on that very first roll, I like to tape the paper down and to hold it securely. Now I'm experimenting here a little bit with where to place that ruler, and you'll see I give too much space, so that when I roll the next roll, there is actually a gap between the two, which is all right if you're going to cut them out. But if you're trying to make a page of solid print to make it like patterned paper, then I like mine to just really get close. So I learned just to pull the ruler back a little bit. I started to realize how much I could give or take to keep those prints from overlapping, and then at the same time not leave a gap between the rows. And so I just have a little bit of paper left. And by the way, the ruler, you see the red lines on the ruler, they can let you see if you're in a straight line. Line those red lines up, or whatever you have, but line it up with the edge of the paper so that you can see you're going in a straight line. And so I went ahead and did it all the way to the end, because you never know how much of that paper you need. And then I wanted to do the same thing with a piece of lighter blue paper. I mean, it's not real light, but it's a medium blue. And I'm going to run the wheel over it in navy. Now, because this is such a small piece of paper, I can get away with just using an ink pad. And I had to re-ink it, that ink pad, and you'll see the difference, how it's so much darker and it looks so much better re-inked. Now I'm doing the same trick with putting the piece of tape back there to hold the blue in place so that I can make that first row without the paper sliding everywhere, because otherwise nothing is holding that paper down. It's just loose. So lining up the ruler, giving myself a little bit of room for the wheel so that it will print on the edge of the paper. And again, you can get enough ink with the pad for such a small area as this, if you prefer to do that as opposed to buying a cartridge or changing out a cartridge. Now I'm leaving quite a bit of you would think it's going to overlap here, but it doesn't. It gives it enough room for the edge of that wheel to hit the ruler. And I'll have a solid sheet of paper here. Now you'll see later that I'm going to cut those into strips and put them at the bottom of my card, because it does match the stamps with those swirly lines, and you'll see them in the other stamps. that does it almost instantly. You have a background piece of paper, and you could do this in so many ways. You can make every row a different color, red, white, and blue on a white background. Very versatile. So here I am. I'm cutting. I want that my bottom strip of paper to be, I think it was 1.5 or 1 3/4. Do it the way you want to do it, and I'm cutting it off at 4.5 because that's the size of my card, the width of my card. Same way with this one, 1.5, and it's just barely over 4.5. Now I'm going to cut some solid color paper for background, and these are how I use my leftover strips, but in order to get a straight line, I put it up against a solid piece of paper, a big piece of cardstock, so that it'll have something to lean up against, and to ensure that I get a straight cut. It doesn't quite fit there, so I butt it up against something, and then that gives me a nice straight line. And I just kind of discovered that on my own because I got tired of cutting crooked lines. So they look straight and then they go crooked on me. So we'll see in a minute how we're going to use these solid colors. Now, back to the ones we stamped a while ago, the poinsettia and the holly leaves, and then just the basic design. We will cut them out, kind of cut them in a squiggly line because it's a squiggly stamp, the edge there, and which is nice. You don't have to be perfect. And those are ready to go. Now I'm using my Tombow Mono Multi liquid glue that I use it because it's repositionable. So I'm putting glue on all my pieces. We'll set them aside to dry so I can glue them down. Now, putting the navy onto the card base, and you can tell that the glue has dried a clear color, or I guess clear is not a color, but it's dried clear. No more white glue. Then also off camera I had stamped some Merry Christmas, and I'm going to use different colorways here. This is the navy with the red, and I tried it with red ink on the Merry Christmas, and blue ink with the Merry Christmas, and green ink with the Merry Christmas, and just play with it. And that's I really recommend doing it because you never know what you're going to really like and which one's really going to stand out to you. Now the 3 little pieces that we cut out are stamped earlier and then cut out. I'm just stacking that on there, and there's one card down. If you remember the one we stamped in green and I cut out the amethyst, I have another card I'll show you in a minute where I used the green and the amethyst, and it's just a slight shadow, but it really adds something to that green. Now we're back to the lighter blue with the navy background, the red ink for Merry Christmas, and then the swirly wheel print is the one we did, the navy on the lighter blue. And I thought the design looked better one direction than the other. I don't think it really mattered, but it kind of appeared that way to me. Now the difference in this card and the other one is that this one has a background square for the stamped squares. And so I'm putting them down, not meshing them down really hard, but keeping them kind of in line because they do have glue on the back. And going to see where I like the placement. Now instead of doing red, green, and navy on this, I just did all red squares. So I'm trying to line them up so they won't just be badly out of line. And there's a poinsettia. And then the third one, I opted to not put a background on it, just to be different, just to have a little design element. And besides, there's that dark navy strip down at the bottom, and I just thought they don't need to compete with each other. So there you go. There's the other card. So I'll line them up together, and I'll pull in that other card that I made. That was the forest green, and that's what that went with, that little square. And on that one, that was the white that was cut smaller to go on top of the dark cardstock. And then I just printed exactly on the white paper. The swirly wheel and the words were just stamped directly onto the white paper. So that's another way. Now those are all the colors we used. And you think you don't use much, but you do. So try this, have fun, play with your little simple stamp sets, work with them, try different colorways, see which way you like it. And at the end, I like to throw in some ideas to use with your rectangle dies or just anything you want. Try something different. Play with your colors and what you have.